You were hitchhiking.
I was.
Now, let me crack this open.
I was hitchhiking. Where was I? I'd walked something like 240 miles. Went right the way up the top of Scotland on the right-hand side going up, and went as far as I could, and then there was a turning off, and it goes that way, and it was right at the top of Scotland. Okay. If I looked out over there, the sea. Okay. The North Sea there. And I followed that road for, it must have been about 60, 70 miles, all right? And this wagon stopped. He says, you having trouble? I says, no. I says, I'm all right, I'm fine. He says, I saw you walking when you were in front of me. And I went, oh yeah, well, what's that got to do with anything? He said, it looks like you were having a bit of bother. I was. My bloody tent dropped out my fucking rucksack. And I had to pick up all my bloody clothes that was with it and stuff and put it back in the bloody rucksack. Anyway, he stopped. He says, where you going? I says, I'm heading towards Fort William. He said, that's 170 miles away. I says, yeah, I know. But I'm still heading towards Fort William. He went, oh, well, he says, I'm heading that way, about that way, but I actually turn off to somewhere else, and you'll have about another 10 miles to walk to Fort William from where I'll drop you off. And I went, oh, that's magic, great. Oh, that way.
160 miles.
All with it and stuff, you know. Anyway, I got into the wagon like, we drove, and instead of driving and turning left when he was supposed to do, he just carried on going on. And it gave me 2 miles to Fort William, where he dropped me off. And he dropped me off because there was something clanking in his bloody wagon and he didn't know what it was.
Right.
So they got one of them garages that have things where you go underneath like that and you fiddle with it under. It's had one of them in it. He pulled over into there. Aye. Anyway, that was that. But I had 2 miles to walk to Fort William, and I thought I can do that in a skip and a jump.
Aye.
So I walked towards it. Anyway, I got to Fort William, and I went down to where all the shops were and stuff, and which didn't really interest me in the slightest, like. And all I needed to do was get me tent up somewhere and get a good night's bloody sleep. I was shattered, Ben, I'll tell you. After the walk, I was just completely shattered. Anyway, I put my tent up in Glen Nevis. Ben Nevis was straight in front of me, but I was in Glen Nevis. And Fort William was over the castle. Fort William was over the back of me.
Aye.
So I'd be camping between there and Ben Nevis. Anyway, put my tent up like that, got my stuff out and stuff, and then it started to get, it was great, it was just unbelievable. I slept for about 6 hours, woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning, and a voice said, pack everything up. So wide awake, 2 o'clock in the morning, wide awake, started to take my tent down, taking all the bloody tent pegs out and stuff like that around, packed it all up again and get ready. I walked down part of the road that leads to Ben Nevis. It's a road.
Aye.
Okay, 4,385 feet, Ben Nevis.
Elevation.
Anyway, besides that, I walked down and I came to a load of steps. just steps, wide, really wide. You could get you could get a car down it easy. Anyway, I was walking, I started to walk, and it was still dark. And I walked about 7, 8 miles maybe, before it started to get light. It just started to get light. I had 41 miles to walk to Glencoe. 41 miles. And I made that fucking walk, man. I got there, and I got not to Fort William, just to the lock. The guy comes and picks me up and takes me across to the ladder.
So you got to Fort William?
Yeah, but he wasn't there. He'd left. This was after 10 o'clock when he closed.
What was you
All
got
right,
to Fort
and
William,
I was
but it was
left.
closed? So I've thrown you off, but you said you were trying to get to Fort William. And you skipped that.
Anyway, I got to the place, the loch, and it was about 40 feet. There's no way I could have fucking jumped that. I'd have been up to here in fucking water if I had, into the loch.
Aye.
Alright? Anyway, I was standing there for a bit, and this guy came back in his boat. He says, "You alright?" I says, yeah, I'm fine. I just need to get across to Glencoe. And he said, he says, "Hang on a minute." He says, "I've got to go and check in the office first." And he was looking for his lighter that his wife had given him for his birthday present, which was that day. That was his birthday, all right? Anyway, he took me across, got up the ladder. He says, "Is there anything in your rucksack that's breakable?" I says, "I don't think so, no." And he just threw the rucksack up over the top, landed on the top. Oh, fucking great, you know. I climbed up the ladder like, and he was halfway up as well because I slipped and I nearly fucking fell backwards into the ladder like, but he stopped me from doing that.
Aye.
And when I got to the top, I went into my pocket and I had a 10-shilling note. That's when 10 shillings were about. Are you listening to this?
I am.
Anyway, there was 10 shillings there. And I said, "Thanks for dropping me off." He says, "Are you going into Glencoe?" He says, "You better bloody ape. Better you than me." He says, "I'd never go in there at night. Not this bloody night anyway." I says, "Why is that?" He says, "It's dark. There was no lights up there. Nothing at all. I got a torch. I had 2 torches.
Aye.
Okay? One was a plastic one with a big battery in, right? But just one battery. And when I switched it on, it was nearly dead. It was giving off a yellow light. You know, when they start fading down.
Yeah.
That was what happened. And there was fading down when I got to the top. And I heard, oh my God. I heard an animal in distress. It was crying, Ben.
Animals can cry.
It was crying anyway, and I needed to get to it. But I couldn't because there was a river in the way, and it was about a 40-foot jump. For fuck's sake. And I had to get across this river. The river was, say, from the window to the gate, okay, wide. And I thought, I should be able to jump that, man. And I tried it, and I did. But I ran back first before running forward to make the jump. I threw my rucksack over, and I cleared it, and it landed in the grass over there. No problem. So I made the jump. The strangest thing was, when I actually made the jump, I cleared it, but the thing was, it was so strange. When I made the jump, I thought I was in slow motion. That's how it felt.
Yeah.
That I was in slow motion. But I cleared the river and I landed on my knees and my elbows like that, down. Rucksack there, no problem. Anyway, this screaming got louder. Oh, what the hell is this? What is it? I switched my torch on to get a light because it was pitch black. I couldn't see a fucking thing. I could see the river and how far it was to jump it, you know. I did that, jumped, made the jump, no problem. But this animal was just crying and crying and trying to get out, and I got my other torch out, you know, and it's sort of like, it was okay. I could see what I was doing now, and I saw it was a fucking stag. One of them.
Yay.
And he had antlers. He had the two tines at the front. That's them, one of the ones sticking out in the front.
Mm.
Okay? I'll tell you something now. This animal could have killed me, fucking piece of piss, man. No problem.
Aye.
It could have
They're
done.
big, powerful animals.
But it didn't. Anyway, I just say, first time I ever called to God. I had never called God before. Never. And I just said, oh, God help me. I need help. Desperately need help. And he came. He was there. He was watching everything I was doing. But he was also helping as well. What I'm telling you, Ben, is no, I'm not bullshitting it anywhere along the line. I'm not. But he helped. I said, take his pain. If necessary, I'll take his pain. I've got something to tell you about that later on when it was a couple of weeks and something over ago. I went to see a priest, somebody I knew. And he started off just as an ordinary priest first, you know.
Mm.
But when I saw him, he was a bishop. Okay? He'd been promoted to bishop. He was wearing a mitre. One of them things that we wear the mitres, you know. Anyway.
Funny hat.
And he went, oh, long time no see. Come on into the church. There was nobody else in there, just him and I. And I told him the story from beginning to end. He said to me, I'll tell you this for sure. I can't think of any man that has had the experiences you've had. And he told me things about it. Anyway, look, it's not finished yet. I shone the torch, and the torch it was okay, it was fine. I could see what I was doing. And round the muzzle of the deer, the main part of the deer, the muzzle, oh you bugger, it was barbed wire wrapped all the way around it, and it was trying to fucking get it off, and it was trying to move, and it couldn't move, and every time it moved, it was screaming in pain. Oh, God, Jesus.
No, I wondered what was wrong with it.
I'm sorry.
No, I wondered what was wrong.
It affects me every time I talk about it, man.
You don't want to see an animal in
But
pain.
anyway, I got that torch and went over to it, removed all the wire around its head first, because it was going like this and it was going like that, and it was, every time it went like that, it made the bloody wire tight around its muzzle, and it, after a while I couldn't hear anything from it, you know, and it was that's what all was here. It couldn't do anything else until I removed the wire.
Mm.
Ben, I have never seen so much fucking blood in my life as that was.
Oh, I can imagine.
It was profusing out, man. It was flying out this blood, you know, because it was over the neck here, all right, and round the side there. But I removed all the barbed wire around its head as far as I could. And there's a lot I couldn't do, you know, but somebody else helped. Anyway, then the torch was dying off, you know, and oh no, bloody torch dying. Oh, I tried the other one, it was already dead. And then completely out the blue, I switched the torch on and this fucking beam just beamed out. I saw everything about 150 yards in front of us on this beam. I couldn't do a beam like that. I didn't have any batteries to be able to put down and replace. Somebody else replaced them for me, Ben. And that's when I knew I called upon God. And he'd come.
When you freed the stag.
And he came. And I says, tell the deer from me, I'm trying to help him. Tell him to stop moving. What he's doing is making it worse. And the deer just stood still. Not a bloody noise out of it. And he kept this deer quiet. Ben, I'm not joking, right? With its head, all right? Its head was here.
Aye.
On me, okay? He could have used his tines and gone like that. Under the throat there, I'd be gone. I'd be dead.
Aye, by the same that
Yeah.
you were
Yeah.
trying to help.
But it didn't come to that. The deer stood still and let me finish what I was doing. And I was kept on asking God to take his pain away. I said, give me his pain, I'll take it. And oh man, it was crippling. It was terrible. It was the worst thing I'd ever seen. Never seen anything. An animal. When it was crying, I was crying with it. Couldn't.
Did you got it free? Did you not get it free?
Anyway, I asked God again. I said, give me the strength to do this, please. He did. He took my fear away like that. I knew exactly what I had to do and why I had to do it, but I had to do first. We didn't point. It was almost like he was pointing at a place where I should be starting. And do you know where it was? Round its testicles. You should have seen the fucking wire around its testes, man.
Oofed.
Fuck's sake. He was in a hell of a bloody state, he was. Really, truly was. Anyway, I sort of removed around. I could see where it was with the torch. Like, I mean, a fucking torch was fucking massive, man. It was giving off this fucking beam. I mean, I could see, with the beam, I could have seen something like the houses over there. No problem. And it just stood there and let me do it. He had no choice, basically. But God told it to stand still while I went to work. I removed it from his testicles all the way around, undid it, and it was all covered in blood, it was rusty as fuck. Really rusty, you know. And I had my pair of toenail cutters, scissors. And I used that to cut most of the wire off, and it did it. It did it. And I was thinking, fucking hell, this is going to be knackered, this. Me,
You won't be cutting your toes.
but it wasn't. It wasn't knackered. It became very, very sharp. And I could cut anything. I cut what they call live wire. That's where it's just, it's not rusty yet, you know. It was called live wire. And I did that, undid everything I could. And I removed all of it down from its testicles and that. And every time I did something like that, the deer would move its head and look at me, and then it pushed its head under here. It was almost as if it was thanking me for doing this. I just had that feeling.
Yeah, animals do that, they'll nudge you with their nose.
Anyway, once I did that, I started to remove the wire from the top of its head, round the tines and stuff. Just lifted the wire off, because it was like a crown it was wearing. It just lifted down it like that, grabbed it, pulled it over this way, and there was a wire going down to the back leg. Okay, of the deer. Came to its back leg. And I put that down gently over there, out of the way of him. And I went to where the wire was, snipped the wire, broke it that in half, but there was still a piece sticking out of its leg. And I removed that. And that's the first time I heard it cry again. Do you know that? I never want to hear that cry again, ever. I never want to do, no. I went through an experience there like as if nobody else had ever done it. That's how I felt. Anyway, I finished doing the rest of its body and stuff, and I was sticking me an old shirt I had, like one of these shirts, exactly like that actually. And had the sleeve, it was torn a bit like. And I put that into the river which was next to me like that, just dumped it in like that, squeezed it like that, and just went over. It's part of the shoulder here, and it was all wire, really, really tight there, and it was really bleeding. So I put my shirt over the top of it like, just to stench the blood. And it did for a while, and it was okay, everything was fine. Anyway, when I finished removing everything, the deer just stood up. And he just stood there looking at me. What a powerful thing that was. It was really, really powerful. Felt it. I felt that from the deer. And the deer put its head under my arm again and sort of like cuddled in. It was cuddling me. And it was. That's all I can say. It was. But everything was fine there. Anyway, I switched the torch off, switched it back on again because I dropped something like that. And it was this time, it wasn't a full blast. It was what was meant to happen the first time. All right? And anyway, the torch went off and put it back in my rucksack because it was starting to get light. Sort of like, anyway, hey. I was sort of like finishing it off and all that, wiping all the blood off it as much as I could, and especially round its throat. And I mean, the fucking blood was coming out of his throat. Was Jesus. I asked God. I says, give me his pain, and he didn't. He took his own. He took his bit. God took his pain, and then after I'd finished everything, it stood up and it started to walk and that, and it was limping a little bit from the hind leg, the left hind leg. And, you know, I mean, I couldn't, I wanted to get to it because it was bleeding at the hoof, just on the hoof.
Aye.
And then I just stood there and sort of looked at the cut. So I got my shirt again, dipped it in water like that and got on the ankle, and he lifted its leg for me so I could get to it. It was like a horse, you know, when you grab its back leg, automatically it lifts it.
Aye.
Horses do. Well, so did that, so did he. I picked the wire out, pulled it out, and I had to pull at it. Oh man, it cried, it was bit. Took the wire out, oh man, you know, and it was still bleeding. Put my shirt around its ankle, and then I felt a voice, and it wasn't mine. But I'll never forget the sound of it. Anyway, I took my shirt off its ankle. The actual cut on the ankle was gone. Gone. No cut there at all. But there was when I put bone round its ankle to staunch the blood.
Yeah. And
there was a cut there then. But when I took my clothes away from it, the cut had gone. A miracle. I can't pronounce it any other way. I can't say it any other way. Anyway, I started to walk because I thought to myself, bloody hell, there's got to be a bridge somewhere. And we walked about maybe 400 yards, and I looked over. It's a little bridge. Went like that. Oh, great, great. So I walked over that way, the deer following me, okay? But there wasn't only just one deer. There was 4 other ones watching what was going on. And they were all does, females.
Yeah.
And that's the deer's harem,
you
know, so to speak. Because the deer were watching me do it, you know. And when I was walked towards the thing, the deer came round 4 doors. They walked past me and they just touched my skin as they walked past. He told them to be, I'm not to be afraid of, you know, because they were, you know, those deer, they're not exactly fucking all with it, like, you know, I mean. But the deer, because I turned around, I said to the deer, and he was looking towards me. He was over here, he was looking towards me. The deer were over there. And I said to him, I says, your females have arrived. And he knew what I said. It's the only way, the deer heard me and he knew what I'd said.
Malibu.
Because he did this. He looked over and there was whatever he was saying. But I couldn't understand him, but he understood me. Aye, aye. Anyway, I carried on going. I got over the bridge, and all the rest of the females followed as well. There was 5 of them actually, but I could only see 4. I didn't see the 5th one until I was over the bridge. And then I looked over, and there was the other one, and that was walking over towards us as well. Anyway, the deer followed us all the way, and I got to the main road, Glencoe Road. I'll tell you something now, I heard bloody metal being slashed together in that place, I'll tell you, I'm not joking. It's if there was a battle going on just down the road, you know. Aye, because it's haunted anyway. Anyway, yeah, well, I got there, got to the road, and I just walked down. And the deer was, well, about that far away from me, what we've got here. It was just there, and it was there with me all the way. Females came down, followed us down. I walked about 4 miles, but where we were to the first house that was down there was 7 miles away. And he walked with me all the way, and the other ones walked as well, came with us. And then this wagon driver pulled up because he'd just come over from Fort William, and he was driving his wagon and he got over in his wagon, and he had his headlights on, and he saw me with this deer, and he said then he saw the other 5 deer, which were, oh man, he stopped. Is everything all right? I says, yeah, everything's fine. He says, what happened? What's happening? I told him what just told you. And he sort of, I wouldn't have believed it if I hadn't have seen it for myself. That was his words. If I hadn't have seen it for myself, I would never have believed it. He says, one of the deer's limping. I says, yeah. I says, it was. And I was just sort of looking, and this time it was his right leg. And he was limping a bit. So I just had a look. Another bit of wire was about that long. And I just pulled it out, staunched the blood, and then he was fine. It was great. And we walked further, all the way down to the house. The house was a really large bungalow. It was more open on the ground. You know what I mean? Oh. It didn't have an upstairs to it, put it that way. Anyway, I could see the light on, and I thought, this fucking guy must be deaf, whoever, because the deer was making one hell of a bloody noise, like, when it was in trouble. And as I said, he sort of like put his brakes on and stopped the van, and the deer sort of like walked further away from him, but they came back. And he gave me another snuggle under my arm. It was so fucking powerful, man. I've never known everything like it in my life before. Anyway, Graham, priest, he says, you do realise that you talked to God, and he's talked to you. He said the one thing that did happen is when you saved the deer's life, all right? You offered your own life to save his. You offered your life to save the deer. I says, no, I didn't. He says, yes, you did. He said, in God's mind, that's what you did. No human being I've ever heard has offered its life for an animal. Ever. You know what? I can't think of anyone either. But it happened. So the deer just sort of wandered off, and it kept on looking back and looking at me. I was watching it look back, and then it disappeared into the forest. I got into the van, we drove on, got about another 7 miles, and then that's when we saw the light on in the house light. And carried on going. And then he said, I've got to stop. I said, okay, all right. And we stopped right next to the first house. And this woman came out. She says, everything all right? She says, yes. She says, I've been watching through my binoculars, waiting for my husband to come back in his van. He'll be here shortly. And she says, but I saw some unbelievable things, and if I hadn't seen them, I would never have believed it. She saw the deer through the binoculars come to me and put its muzzle under here. And she thought the deer was having a go at us, but it wasn't. And she said, I saw them disappear into the forest. What happened there? So I had to tell the story again, And she said, yes, I can believe that. From what I saw deer don't do that, just wander around people. You did something to save its life. And I said, yeah, basically, yes. And she says, well, I saw it, witnessed it myself. I says, yeah, well, give us your name, because I need a witness with it. I did need a witness, other witnesses. There was about 5 or 6 of them witnesses saw me do with deer. And, but that was it, basically. I got back, and I went to see Simon. Told him about it, and he said, Bob, he says, that was one of the most magical experiences you could ever go through. He says, God was with you. I says, yeah, I know he was. And I've believed in God ever since. Look, some of the things that happened there, I mean, I couldn't have done it. Any way, shape or form, I couldn't have done it.
No.
But I got help to do that.
I believe you, man. What I'm gonna do.
Anyway, as I went to see the priest, we were about 3 or 4 weeks later. But it's never been known where a man would offer his life, a human being offer his life for a deer, or for any animal as far as that goes. And he couldn't think of anybody else that had ever done something like that.
No, I can't think of any myself offhand.
It was a one-off go, Ben, it was a one-off go, and I'm telling you now, I swear to you, blindly swear to you, what I've told you is the truth.
I don't doubt it, man. I don't doubt it.
It is. There's no bullshit there, nothing. I told the truth. Everything that I saw. Everything I did. Most of the time, though, I was crying, because it was crying. praying to God, please save it. Do you know, it still tear jerks me talking about it still.
Yeah, of course, man.
I was 22 when that happened, Ben. It's not something I did last week or the week before or a couple of months ago.
Aye.
I was 22 years old.
It's like 55 years.
Yeah.
Right, I'm gonna hit stop just so this doesn't get lost.